earth, who can tell? I guess there is no one to blame. We're leaving ground. Will things ever be the same again? It's the final countdown. With so many light years to go and things to be found, yeah, I'm sure that we'll miss her so. It's the final countdown. Windmill, windmill, fatherland, is everybody in? Feel good. Feel good. City's breaking down on the camel's back, and they just have to go 'cause they don't know back. So while you feel the streets, it's a feeling to see. You won't get out the candy 'cause you're bad and free. You got a new horizon, it's a bearable style. A melancholy town where we never smile. And all I wanna hear is the message beer. My dreams have gotta kiss me 'cause I don't get sleep now. Windmill, windmill, for the land. Love forever, hand in hand. Take it all in on your stride. It is taking falling. Love forever, love is free. Let's turn forever, you and me. A windmill, windmill, for the land is everybody in. Laughing against these ass-mats, fast cats, light 'em up like black cats, ladies, zombies at the jack. This my chocolate attack. You are stepping in the hottest here, get me ripping in the hottest here. Watch me as a graphic said I shout this small town with your sound. You in the break, I'm about the dust, can't pop with us with your town. You kill it, so don't stop, get it, give. We are your captains in the city, watch me navigate. Turn forever, hand in hand. Take it all in on your stride. It is digging for love forever. Love is free. Let's turn forever. You and me. Windmill, windmill for the land. It's everybody. Don't stop, get it, get it. We are your captains in it. Steady, watch me navigate. Don't stop, get it, get it. We are your captains in it. Steady, watch me navigate. Don't stop, get it, get it. We are your captains in it. Steady, watch me navigate. It's everybody,
Welcome to the Virtual Stab Comedy Theater. It's time for Podful Casts. Please welcome to the screen, Court and Charlie.
Hello, everybody.
Wow, hello.
Exciting to be on all of your screens yet again. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, as Jesse so generously mentioned, my name is Charlie,
And my name is Court Hansen.
and this is Podful Casts. And it's a show where we try to, let's say, elevate, a lesser known voice in the world of literature and cinema.
Yeah, we're all about speaking. We're all about giving voice to power.
Yes.
And if there's one group that hasn't been represented enough in our media, it's baby boomer white male authors.
And guys from Maine, too. They're both silent in the world of movies and books. And so we're here to change that, frankly. And we found one of the scrappiest and newest of the whole bunch, a little fella named Stevie King from up Maine way.
He's a little guy. He's
3'4". He's 3'4", and he just churns out spooky books on his big old typewriter. And he has to really reach to get to all the keys. But yeah, with that image in mind, yes, we're here to talk about Stephen King. And of the many books he's written, many of them have been turned into more visual media, such as television or movies. And this show, every month, we have a guest on, and we allow them to very generously allow them to pick which of these many adaptations is one they would want to watch and talk about, and then we talk about it. So we've had a nice mix so far, I'd say, of Stephen King stuff.
That's true. We have. Trying to think what else we should touch on before we dive in.
Well, yeah, I mean we've covered a few things so far. We've done his only directly to TV adaptation with no book. We've done one of his real big ones with It. And I think today's topic is probably the one I'm the most excited about in terms of the who made the movie. Because it's a John Carpenter movie, and I really love John Carpenter, as do most people that like horror movies, I would say. So to talk about this movie with us, and the person that picked this movie is our guest today. She is a film editor in Los Angeles, and to disclose the nepotism up front, she's also my cousin. But we're primarily here to talk to her because she's cool and a film editor, and the cousin part is like down the list. But anyway, please welcome to your screen my cousin, the film editor, Kelly McGillicuddy.
Hello, I am glad to see you.
Yes.
This is my first live stream, so I'm very very excited for it. I'm sure I will be very good. But I'm excited to talk about Christine, and I'll try not to give you cousin privilege in my acceptance of your Christine theories, because there's a lot, like we said earlier, to unpack from this movie, because it's not only like a good Stephen King story where you have a guy being driven mad by some sort of object, which is really one of my favorite things, but you also have John Carpenter layering a lot of meaning on top of that. So there's a lot to go through.
Yeah, I'm excited. I am excited to talk about this movie. Before we do that, I do want to chat with you briefly about your cool big Hollywood job, which is editing films. Now, Court and I, despite hosting a podcast / live stream about movies, are mere amateurs in the field. And, I can't tell a boom mic from a camera lens to save my life. I don't know how they make these goddamn things, but I love them. And but it's cool to have someone on that does actually know how movies are made, at least in some parts of the process. So
I would go so far as to say the film is made in the editing room. So yeah, I'm very familiar with it. But I'm
give us your pitch for that. Yeah, give us your pitch for the importance of film editing and why it sometimes goes overlooked as part of the art of cinema.
Well, one thing about film editing is that it's called like the invisible art, and because a lot of the idea of editing is to slowly guide your eye through and your brain and your heart through both the like narration and plot, but also like the character development and emotions. Editing should, for the most part, be invisible. Like, you shouldn't notice it when it cuts in a scene where two people are talking. You shouldn't be noticing the cuts back and forth. You should just be in the scene. So a lot of people forget about it, but that's also intentional. So I think a lot of the times that goes by a wayside when people talk about film, because it's really hard to spot unless you're doing it yourself, or you watch like a ton of movies and kind of know what to look for. And I think that so sometimes it's a little bit of a hard to talk about part of filmmaking, but it is one of the only parts of filmmaking that is unique to cinema itself. Like photography is, cinematography is just a version of photography. Like sound recording came, they had already, recorded sound. Like what montage or like editing, putting two moving pieces next to each other and like before and after each other in time is unique to cinema itself. That's the only time that you have this language where when you show somebody looking like to the left and then you show an apple, we know that they're looking at that apple. We might even guess that they're hungry. So that's something that like only happens in cinema, and that art form is only in cinema. So I think it's also one of the most key things to understand when you're making a movie about, the narrative structure and then of course everything else. But yeah, so that's why I spent all my time in a dark cave in front of a computer.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? we have, unfortunately, everyone's profession seems to be moving towards the dark computer cave in terms of the labor. But no, that is a very excellent and succinct description of why editing is important. And I think you've told me similar things in the past that's gotten me to pay better attention to how movies are edited, and it's given me a greater appreciation for it for sure. And it is harder because, like you said, it's kind of invisible. You only really notice it if it's bad sometimes, which
Oh,
is
for sure.
yeah, which is sort of unfortunate in terms of bringing recognition to it. But when something's badly edited, it really sticks out.
I was at a bar the other night on Friday, and everyone around me, there's a bunch of people from my cohort. Everyone around me was having conversations with one another, talking, socializing, getting to know one another. And I was just transfixed by diners, drive-ins, and dives that was playing on the silent on the bar TV. So all I could notice was the way it was edited. And if you've never watched it without sound, it's edited like a nightmare. It is horrifying to watch. Just jumping between shots of Guy Fieri like shoveling greasy food into his face to like someone pouring, like slapping breadcrumbs on a chicken thigh. It's just, and so I learned the value of editing is what I'm trying to say.
But that is really true, because one of the things that I tell people if they want to learn about editing is to watch stuff on mute, and that's a lot easier to see the actual cuts when you don't have sound or music to gloss over or anything that might be jarring. It's a lot easier to pick up on, and you just unfortunately did it on like a food horror show. I haven't watched that in a while, but I remember it being like very, very disturbing. There was like a lot of oil and raw meat and just not good. Like, I don't know, I think Kitchen Nightmares was like less unsettling to me than Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives.
That seems like one of those shows that would like be really upsetting to watch on like mushrooms or something, because you get like really fixated on like the amount of oil that goes into everything and get really upset or something like that.
Yeah, watching things deep fry silently it's odd.
That is like really creepy. Yeah.
We do have a couple questions from the chat room on Twitch.
Oh, excellent! Thank you for monitoring.
Maybe we should. Yeah, they call me the monitor. First question is from Waylon_Nightbreed, asking how long has Kelly been an editor?
I graduated. Well, I'm an assistant editor on most of the bigger like studio films I've done. I've only been the full editor on lower independent films. So I graduated from grad school at USC in 2012 and started working on America's Got Talent, and have just been working since then. So since 2012. So oh my God, so long. Wow. Yeah.
11 years. Yeah.
11
Almost
years.
11 years. Yeah, you graduated. Yeah.
And then the other question is from user Gaucho Back, which I believe is our good friend Mike LaRosa.
Oh yeah, hi Mike.
Who is quite the cinephile, if I do say so myself.
He is.
He asks, "What's an example of a movie with really good editing?"
That's hard. I mean, one of my favorites that I absolutely love, but this is hard because it's really weird, but it really, really works, is the movie Don't Look Now with Donald Sutherland. There's a really, really incredible sex scene in that has some amazing cutting, and there's a lot of really weird cutting in that that's really, really good. I mean, you know what? If you want like a good standard example, Mad Max Fury Road, incredible, perfect.
Oh yeah.
Very little dialogue, everything's told with looks and cuts. She knows exactly when to leave things and exactly when to make things short. That there's not a single thing out of place in that movie. So I would say Mad Max Fury Road is a great editing movie.
Oh, cool.
Mike says that Don't Look Now is in his top 5 of all time. So.
Yeah, that movie is real fucking creepy. I watched it one time by myself, and it's a bad vibes movie for sure, and it's got a real weird, crazy weird ending. Yeah. The story it's based on is pretty good too. I read the story a long time ago. It's I think it's Daphne I can never pronounce the name. Daphne du Maurier or
Du Maurier.
Yeah, who wrote Rebecca. I believe I think it's her that wrote the short story or it's more of a novella, I guess, but it's also very good. So, and yeah, Fury Road. Everyone loves Fury Road.
Yeah.
A great double feature. with let's just say they're both connected by weird little guys at some point.
Yeah, there is weird little guys.
There's weird little guys in both of them, yeah.
Scary weird little guys.
Yeah, and upsetting.
Fun weird little guys.
The type of little guys you don't want to see.
Speaking of scary weird little guys, back to Stephen King.
Yeah, our tiny man.
Yeah. 4 feet tall.
Yeah. Kelly, what is your background with Stephen King adaptations and books and everything? Like, how did you get interested in the King?
I started early, like many of us do. I remember reading Pet Sematary when I was like in 4th grade and freaking the hell out. So, and from there I just kind of was hooked. So I've been reading him like basically as long as I can remember. And then I listened to a lot of his books as an adult on audiobook when I was like driving long distances. So I've listened to like The Dark Tower twice and It like once or twice. So I just I like his writing. It's very easy. It hooks me in a way that is good for my attention span. It's like I can actually pay attention to it. And and then adaptations. I've seen a lot of them. I love Maximum Overdrive. I almost picked that for this when Charlie said this because I love Maximum Overdrive, and I could.
The other great Stephen King tale of evil cars. Yeah.
There's a bulldozer in both of these, but the bulldozer is like evil in Maximum Overdrive.
And it's a force of good. And
the bulldozer saves the day in this one. Yeah.
So I don't know. I've seen a lot of them. I love The Shining, all that. I think he's fascinating. I love somebody who consistently makes works that are popular with the population like him. I think that's a real talent, and just I'm a big fan of him.
We would agree, I would say.
Yeah, the fact that he's so popular, but his stuff is so weird, is interesting. There's not many other people that are comparable in terms of just sheer like strange choices that manage to not alienate audiences completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is surprising given because he's a weird writer, and his writing is straightforward in a way that's very nice and consistent, but he also he makes some bizarre choices in terms of what to write about and the characters he chooses to depict, and he has
whether or not to have a child orgy.
He's got the signature, the King signature. Yeah.
I was going to say, one of the things that I remember about Pet Sematary so vividly is there's a weird hand job scene in that I like is scarred into my brain. So there's always a weird, he gets away with so much crazy stuff.
He has certain little fixations too. I mean, there's certain things that are in like someone mentioned, or I forgot where I heard this first pointed out, but he loves blue chambray work shirts. They're in like half of his books. Some character will be wearing one of those, and he describes it as that every single time. No idea why, but he likes them, or he likes people wearing them at least. But he's a interesting guy, that Stephen King. And so I was mentioning earlier before we hopped on, but I think this will be the first episode of this show we've done where I have now seen the movie, but I have not read the book. Because I've not read Christine. I was thinking about reading it before we were going to do this episode, but it's a very long book, and I've been busy, so I did not read it. But I did watch the movie. So that'll be interesting because I think we're going to end up talking mostly more about the movie than we. Sometimes we do a little more comparison between the two, but I think that'll work to our advantage because this movie is directed by none other than horror master John Carpenter, who is, a great favorite of mine, and I assume many other people that that like these sorts of movies.
Yeah. I've read the book. I read it maybe like 2014, 2015. Okay. It is very long, probably twice as long as it needs to be given the content. I think that it would be better as like a quick read, like The Long Walk, which is always at the forefront of my mind as like short King. yeah, but it's pretty good, and there's some stuff in it that I remember from the book that wasn't in the movie that I think could have played well in the movie. So it's interesting to see, to kind of look back on what was included and what wasn't. But it's a pretty straightforward adaptation. A lot of it is pretty much the same as the book.
Yeah, and like we were talking about, it's interesting because I guess this movie came out in 1983, and it came out a mere 8 months after the publication of the book. And I guess, according to Wikipedia at least, the production of the movie started almost right as the book came out. So they're definitely linked together more than I think might have been typical for some of his other adaptations, because they basically were almost simultaneously released, which I think is also kind of interesting.
Yeah,
So
I think production had begun before when I looked up it, before the novel had actually been finished written.
Oh,
So they
really?
started
Oh, cool.
production, yeah, and so then it was finished halfway through, and that's why there's the scene at the beginning when Christine claims her first victim in the assembly line. The screenwriter wrote that, and they had to film it first because all the other cars are yellow, and they had to paint them red to be the backup Christines, because they used. I can get very into the amount of Christines they used to make.
No, this is great.
I
This
was
is
curious
exactly
about that.
Oh, it's fascinating. And so they shot that first, wrote and shot that first. Nothing like that happens in the book because it was already done by the time the book was being finished writing.
Okay,
So
that
that's
explains
one
it.
of those layovers from that.
So there was a bunch of Christines. Well, obviously James Cameron famously made that sequel, Christines, which was more of an action movie.
He walks into the pitch room.
Yeah. Yeah, puts an S.
Dollar
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, as we usually ask our guests, Kelly, so what in particular, what do you, we can talk more about the movie in detail, but in general, kind of why did you pick this movie? Like, what do you like so much about it?
I love John Carpenter, so I love a John Carpenter movie. My first go-to was either The Shining. I love, but I feel like that's like the basic one. And then Maximum Overdrive is fun, but it's like not a great film. That is like the most coked out movie ever made, though, because Stephen King was like so coked out that he couldn't direct scenes, because it's the only movie he ever tried to direct, I believe, as well. And was like they literally would not allow him to direct scenes. So George Romero apparently stepped in to do portions of it, and like you can totally see it when you're watching it, because there's just like shots that are like these crazy zoom ins and stuff that are very like good horror, and then the rest is like totally, you can tell when Stephen King is there. It's very funny. But Christine, I had not seen it. It was one of the last John Carpenter like big movies I hadn't seen of his, and I watched it and was kind of like mad I hadn't seen it before. I liked it so much because I was like, this is so good. Why didn't anyone tell me that? I just, for some reason, always thought it was going to be like goofy or like kind of campy, and it's like not at all. It's like very, it looks amazing. Just everything about it. It's incredibly well made. And quite frankly, it should be so goofy to like pan around to see like a car and be like, oh no, the car's lurking behind me. Like, and he manages to make like a creepy car stalking you horrifying. Like, just like genuinely like these nightmarish images of like the car on fire and he's running in the light, and like, there's just so many like little things that just really make it terrifying. And I really just find that something that is common in Stephen King's writings, where it's like he'll have like a painting, and just the way he describes it makes it like so creepy. Just like, oh, like in room 14, whatever that is. Like
1408.
He describes it like the colors in it, and like it's always like stayed in my mind, like just how creepy that was for just something simple like a painting. And so I feel like this is the best version of that Stephen King, like a random object is terrifying, and like done by a good director who knows like exactly how to make a random object terrifying. And so I think it's just a good synthesis of what King is good at and what Carpenter is good at.
I would totally agree.
It's an awesome movie.
It's fun.
It has kind of a legacy of being a lesser Carpenter and a lesser King adaptation. But I definitely don't agree with that anymore now that I've seen it. I really liked it too.
I felt the same way.
I love the tone of it. It never really goes campy in the way that you would expect it to. You would think that it would with like all the 50s rock and roll and doo-wop songs, and he wears like a leather vest at one point, and even that feels like believable for what is happening to the character. It's kind of like the Peter Parker in Spider-Man 3 situation, where they undergo this otherworldly transformation, and the way that they show that is by being as lame and uncool as possible.
Yeah, just like a weird little dick. Yeah. Like, but I feel the same way. I honestly I have not seen this. I hadn't seen this movie until we watched it for this, because I felt the same way, where I was like, well, it's a movie about a scary car. I don't. It didn't sound good to me. You got to really convince me on a scary car movie. I've seen Duel, which is famously like Steven Spielberg's. I don't know if it's his first movie. It was one of his first movies, and it's based on a
Richard
Matheson story. That is very good. But it's hard to make cars scary in the supernatural sense. Cars are scary. They kill so many people all the time. As we've been speaking here, people have died from cars. So they're scary.
Hopefully while they were watching this stream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In their car.
Yeah. Shout out RIP. Thank you very much for your support.
Yeah, we'll miss you, Mike.
Yeah.
Click like and subscribe, please, before you slip into the ditch. Yeah,
this is we're trying a lot of branding exercises, and one of them was we're the only show that encourages you to watch this while you drive with the maximum amount of distraction possible. We encourage VR headsets behind the wheel for this show.
Definitely.
So, and you can take that to the bank. So, anyway,
drive anywhere with it.
Yeah,
not just the bank.
No idea where to put this, but do you think a funny alternative title, The New Adventures of Old Christine, is a good title for this movie?
Thinking that as well.
I figured you would.
Trying to find a place to slip it in.
Yeah. But it really is. It is The New Adventures of Old Christine. It's funny to think, because now the movie is set. So again, for anyone in the audience who hasn't seen this movie, which is possibly more than we would expect, because neither of us had seen it until recently. This is a movie about it's a 1957 Plymouth Fury, if I'm not mistaken, a car from the 1950s that is purchased by sort of a loser in 1978. It's like this beat up old car, and he purchases this car and becomes sort of obsessed with it. It begins to change his personality into that of sort of a unpleasant greaser. And then the car itself becomes sort of possessive and protective of him, and starts to sort of do nefarious things, increasingingly, including murdering some of the bullies at his high school, attempting to murder his girlfriend.
40-year-old bullies.
Yes, 40-year-old. Well, it was the 80s. People were smoking cigarettes constantly and huffing leaded gasoline. People aged quicker. But nonetheless, yes, the primary bully in this movie is approximately 47 years old, and which is probably why he's so mean. Yeah.
In the scene when the teacher confronts him, I was joking.
Two fully grown men fighting.
Yeah, I was joking that the guy was like, "Come on, man, we were supposed to graduate together.
We graduated together in 1962, and you're still here because you couldn't pass this one class.
Still can't pass shop."
Yeah.
I love that. That's like in the movie The Blob. Everybody in that entire town is 36 years old. The high school students, the cops, the old lady is literally like a young woman. But it's crazy. I love that.
The evil scientist. Everyone in that movie. That is true. Another really great movie I hadn't seen until much more recently. That's criminally underrated. The Blob.
Love it.
Yeah, that one's really good. It's another 80s remake of a 50s movie that's really good. But yeah, so the Christine is the plot is relatively simple, and I think, like we talked about, one of the coolest things about it is just it's done like you said, it never gets real campy or goofy, and it's played very straight throughout, and I think that's a real strength because yeah, it would be so easy for this movie to be very silly. And I would assume, I mean, Court, you've read the book, so I don't know how much silly Stephen King stuff there is in it. The man has he loves the 1950s, so I imagine this allowed him to really wreak havoc with that material. And I think this movie works really well for how kind of straightforward and kind of stripped down it is because it never gets enough bloat in it to like get weird or bad.
Mm-hmm.
How does
Your
it
sound cut out
oh, it did? Oh no.
for a second. Okay, go on.
Hopefully
Sorry.
my internet is okay. Well, that's the part of that's the whole deal with streaming, right? Is that we're at the mercy of the internet. But anyway, I was going to ask you about compared with the book. I don't know how silly does the book get because Stephen King is notoriously obsessed with the 1950s. And with the book being as long as it is, I could see it being a little sillier than the movie is.
Not really. The tone is. It has been a while since I read it, but from what I remember, the tone is pretty similar. It's played pretty straight. It's it's maybe a little more horror in parts because I guess we'll probably get to that, but the book's maybe a little scarier in a couple places than this movie ever gets to, but I think that's all right for the most part. But tonally, they're pretty similar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess one thing I had read is that in the book, the car is possessed by the spirit of its previous owner, and in the movie, it is sort of ambiguous the source of the evil that animates the car.
Yeah, that's the thing that I earlier mentioned that was missing. There's a couple really creepy scenes in the book where like the decaying, bloated corpse of the guy that sells in the car will like appear in the seat next to him.
Oh,
and
that is
like
scary.
talk to him and stuff. And I remember those parts in the book being pretty creepy. But that's the only like major thing that I can recall being in the book that wasn't in the movie.
Okay.
But those would have been. I think that those would have been cool scenes. Have that incredibly old guy who he lived another like 30 years after making this movie. The guy that sold him the car.
Really? Damn.
Yeah. He was born almost 100 years ago. That
Jesus.
guy. He was born in 1924, and he was already old as shit when he made Christine, but he made it to 2011.
Damn. Good for him.
Yeah.
He's doing something right.
Yeah.
Not getting in that car.
I really
for
love
one.
all the character actors they have in this movie.
Yeah.
It's,
Anything with
really
Harry
great.
Dean Stanton is going to be a good movie.
Yes. Yeah, and he's great too. Yeah, everybody in it is just really, really performing. I quite enjoy it. I enjoy Richie or the Cunningham's mother very much. She's
Mhm.
great in this, I think.
Yeah.
Doing this like insane version of a like 80s too gentle parenting. It's very good.
Yeah, his parents are. Yeah, everyone. I would agree with that. Like, even all the secondary characters are kind of just right for the movie. I also really love the auto shop owner. I don't
he was
remember the
awesome.
actor. He's really good though. He's just like, just like this like fat old crabby guy, and I don't know. It's a character that is basically just. He's not in that many scenes, but he's just entertaining to watch even for the little bit of time that he's around. And he gets crushed by the seat. That was actually kind of I thought one of the most unpleasant deaths of the movie is the car like moving the seat forward and crushing him against the steering wheel. Maybe just because like it's easiest to imagine that happening because like I've gotten stuck in an awkward position between the steering wheel and the seat or something before, but I don't know, it felt very it grossed me out.
It's so slow too.
Yeah.
And again, that's a scene that's really, really simple where you're just seeing, the seat move up from behind, and then we kind of see him. You literally see zero gore. It's just on his face or the seat behind him, and it still is so effective where you're just yeah, it's a visceral feeling of like, oh, like especially when they do it so slowly, it really allows you time to think about how fun it would be to be squished against the steering wheel, especially on an old 50s car. That's gonna be hard. Like, no.
Yeah,
No,
they
thank
were
you.
making it out of fucking melted down B-52 bombers or whatever. Yeah, whatever
Yeah,
they made the
cast
steering
iron
wheels out.
steering wheel.
Yeah. Like these steering wheels need to be as hard as possible so that if people stop suddenly, it won't break the steering wheel. Like, I remember someone explaining that to me when I was a child. They're like, well, cars they crumple now so that all the force of the accident goes into the car, and someone explained like if a car doesn't crumple, all the force of the accident goes into you. And I just pictured people just like in like a perfectly like immaculate car, just like exploding, like just like hitting a car, just, like that was how I envisioned it in my mind, which is I think roughly true.
I mean, I'm gonna say it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely true.
I'm trying to think of some of the other. So this is the thing I thought was surprising too was that, and maybe it's just because John Carpenter's previous movie, the year before, was The Thing, which is a very gory movie, famously so. And this movie is not very gory.
So The Thing was a commercial flop, like big time failure when it was released. So it was his first big movie and his first his first big flop, like really high profile. So he immediately was like, what is the next thing that's available that I can basically do to kind of erase this flop of The Thing? And so one of the things that people did not like about The Thing was like that it was too scary, like it was too gory. It's like people were too freaked out by it. So I think you really see that in his next film, Christine, where it's like this movie actually was rated PG when they first submitted it to the MPA because back then there was no PG-13, so it was either PG or R, and they had to leave in all the like F-bombs and curses just to get the R rating because John Carpenter didn't want to release a PG rated horror movie.
Yeah.
Although
like
too much
of how they make movies now.
What?
It's like the opposite of how they make movies now, where they basically cut it down to the one F-bomb in order to get a PG-13 rating and make this profitable and bland as possible.
Yeah. That makes sense though. That he ratcheted it back for this movie. I mean, it works too. It's not like you need it to be super. Unlike The Thing, where that's part of the appeal of the movie. This movie is frightening with or without. It implies plenty, which is really effective.
Well, and again, showing the talent of the crew that Carpenter had is this is also a Roy Abergost joint. So he did the special effects on The Thing, and then also did the special effects on Christine, and I mean, and a million other movies, like Jaws 2 was like, and just everything that's good he did. So I also think that's fascinating because I love to watch a crew person evolve, and so it's great to see again where he has all the like disgusting guts and like growing and like organic sludge of The Thing. Christine is like literally the opposite. It's hard metal and like constructed, and like he still again makes it's still body horror, but it's car body horror. You know what I mean? Like when she's like, moving out, like
exactly,
and stuff. It's like, oh, like, and I think that's fascinating because I think a lot of the movements in the repair scene kind of remind me of movements in the development of the like Thing, especially like in the dog pen or whatever. When like, first we're seeing it mimic like a lot of those, and it's funny that the same guy did it, but he just is terrified by that, rightfully so.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yeah, the scene where the car regenerates is very Thing-like in that it's like it feels it is like the scary thing is like or the classic horror thing is like taking something that's not supposed to be one place and putting it in another place, and so you're watching a car like regenerate like a cicada or something, like with its like shell like morphing around all weird, and it's like it's not gross because it's not a living thing. There's no blood or fluid, or well, there's fluid I guess, but it's all brake fluid and shit. But you're watching this thing like behave like an animal that's not, and it's it's creepy. That part was really cool too. It looks really good for how old it is. It's like it looks amazing.
Yeah, he did that by for that Christine. It was like parts of it were a plastic version, and then it what he did is put a like pneumatic like suction vacuum on the inside, and then they crumpled the car in, like by like vacuuming it, and then what they did is reverse the footage, so
Oh,
it
cool.
looks like it's like fixing itself, and then basically yeah, that's how they did that. And it's very, very simple, but it's so effective.
Yeah, it looks so good. That's very cool. I
Yeah.
didn't know that's how they did that. So you were talking about how many Christines there were. Like, what's the deal with that? I figured they had to make. I had heard a little when I perused Wikipedia. I knew they had to make a bunch of different cars to use because the car catches on fire at some point. It's ruined many times.
Yeah.
So yeah, they made a bunch of these.
Yeah, I think they had 17 full cars that they made out of 24 cars because they had to, and then like some of the parts were from other Plymouths, I guess, of around the same era because apparently there's just like not a lot of this kind of car around, and they basically a huge portion, most of the budget went to finding and buying all of these cars. So they had like one pristine one that was like camera ready at all times, basically, and then they had the fire car, which is like they coated that all in like jelly and lit the jelly on fire. And then like they had then they had like a souped up one to do like racing shots, and then they had like a reinforced one to do all the like crashing into the everything that it crashes into, and then plus additional parts to do all the close ups and for individual shots or whatever. So and then they replaced like parts as they went. But I think they wound up with like four functional cars and auctioned them off at the end of the movie or something. But yeah,
Okay.
so they had to source and find all these cars, and apparently it was a huge portion of the budget.
Yeah, I guess that's a problem with like picking a specific like model and year of car. Is you're gonna really get hosed on like I guess trying to find all of them. It's also very funny to think about the fact that so this movie, it was made in 1983, but it's set in 1978, and the car is 1957. So like, I mean, if you were to transpose that, that would be like a car from 2002 being the villain in a movie, which is very funny to think about because
Yeah.
like if you were to update this movie, it would be like I don't know, like a 2002 Saturn, like driving around playing like Incubus like all the time and murdering people, which would be pretty funny.
Yeah, that sounds sick as hell. I would be
Yeah,
totally scared of
actually,
that. Are you
this is
kidding
actually a
me?
good
A
idea. Yeah,
blacked out Saturn following you around blaring Incubus? Like, no.
yeah, like a new metal car. Yeah.
Oh, and the cars were never new metal car. The cars were never remote controlled. There was always stunt drivers.
Oh,
So you
really?
have to,
Okay.
yeah. So even when the car was like totally blacked out, because when Christine is evil, all her like windows are blacked out. They like literally had like one little strip that had like a tint over it, and the rest was painted black. So he had like no visibility and just had to
Wow.
drive through like this much.
That's like so insanely unsafe. It's very just so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
They had 20 stunt drivers, I think. So
And they went through 18 of them.
Yeah. Many of them were killed
exactly. Two
by the same
survived.
Christine. Yeah. I'm still thinking about this 2002 remake of Christine or a 2023 remake of Christine set with a 2002 car. I'm picturing like a guy, like a nerdy guy that he like gets the car and then he starts wearing like Jenko jeans and he gets like a chain wallet and
There was a chain wallet in this movie.
oh,
I
there
noticed
was.
it when the bully was being chased down. He had
Yeah.
a chain wallet going.
He did.
It'd be a nice little winking homage to the original Christine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A guy in like Jinko jeans with like bleached tips, like running down the street with his wallet chain. I think it's good.
Yeah, yeah. His
And
pants are too wide for him to escape the car.
Sean William Scott could be the guy that sells the car.
Yeah,
in a loving reference to dude, where's my car?
yeah.
Exactly.
A real homage to the vibrant culture of 2002. But it is interesting because it's like even at that point, like the 50s had such a distinct whole thing going compared with, the late 70s, early 80s, I guess, which obviously now has its own distinct vibe to it. But it's very funny to think how close together they were. Like 20 years doesn't seem like that long for like going back to 2002, but the 50, even then the 50s was like kind of this corny old decade or whatever. I had to look at my notes here for the movie. So I did, as I always do in movies, I used the inflation calculator. So he buys the car for $250 in 1978, which would amount to $1,124 in today's money. Because $250 sounds like comically low for a car. $1,000 is still not bad. I mean, especially with cars are like weirdly expensive now, from what I understand. My girlfriend just had to buy a car a few months ago, and it was a nightmare. There were no cheap cars, so $1,000 for a murderous car.
It does drive.
It does drive. It drives great. Yeah.
She turns off a couple times, but the rest
that's usually to make a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can deal with the car's personality.
Yeah.
If
I mean, Christine is clearly abusive, so we have to factor that in. That you're gonna take. This is not going to be a healthy relationship no matter what way you look at it. Christine's not going to allow that. So
Christine has borderline personality disorder. And I mean, with modern medication, she might have managed better. But in 1983, it was the dark ages for that sort of thing. They weren't going to treat Christine. They would have called her hysterical. Yeah.
They literally would. They've been like, your wandering uterus is causing you all these troubles.
Yeah.
Talking to their possessed car. Yeah, so I think it was interesting earlier, Court, that you said that the like bloated guy, because I had listened to this book on audiobook, but I remember that sequence and the bloated like previous owner, and I do think that it was fairly clear in this maybe that the owner was kind of possessing it, or that like whatever the previous owner was is now possessing Christine, but I think it really. I don't know. I could go either way. It would be kind of fun to have like a sequence where there was like the bloated corpse of the guy talking straight up talking to Arnie. But although I love the way that we don't see him, again, it's like this movie reminds me a lot of The Shining, where it's like we don't, it's like his slow descent into madness by working on Christine. And I think I like that we just kind of see this happen in the background where like he's suddenly wearing cooler clothes, he's not wearing the glasses, like now he's in the leather vest, like these like little things that like, and I feel like sometimes like if we saw like the guy like encouraging him, that might be too much. I wonder, especially because the rest of the movie is so quiet and like so downplayed, like a lot of it, like especially like when in the beginning when I always forget the football player's name.
Oh, his character's name?
Yeah.
I just did too, and I just watched it. Is it Dennis?
Dennis? Yeah.
I think it's Dennis. It's a D name. Yeah.
Yeah, him and Dennis's like very clear relationship is like at the beginning, like it is so quiet and like them like talking in the car. It like really could be a totally different movie, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, it starts off like a
horror movie.
It starts off like a classic, like a sex comedy where he's like, "We got to get you laid
like
before senior year starts." Yeah, and then it takes a hard left turn because he buys a scary car instead, which does end up getting him laid, but at what cost?
Does it get him laid? Because that girl chokes to death, and she's like almost chokes to death, and she's like, "Bye."
Oh yeah, I guess I mean, you don't see it, but I thought it was implied that the pure
they do
energy
make
of
out
the car.
On her at the very least. He gets to make out.
He's getting to some sort of a base in or on the car or near the car. But yeah, the car doesn't seem to take to him having other relationships. The scene where the girl chokes in the car is also very scary. I think this is the first scene in the movie where the car like attacks someone. And I was surprised because it takes a little bit for that to happen. And so at that point, I didn't really know, like, well, is it going to be real goofy when, like, the car starts killing people? And when that happened, it was almost like a Final Destination thing where I was like, well, you can kind of almost, like, see that it doesn't, it's not like the car, like, grows a hand and, like, tries to strangle her. Like, it's just kind of, like, causes bad stuff to happen. And
it does the HAL 9000 trick of creating an external problem that he has to go fix in order to get him out of the car.
Yeah, exactly.
Not help her.
So I thought,
Well, she does at the very beginning, the very first scene. She chops off the guy's fingers when she's on the assembly line, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
kills
True.
the guy that gets inside of her. We don't see that guy die; he's just dead.
yeah,
They open the door and he's just dead. So we don't. Yeah, but this is the first time we see her really try to kill somebody. And yeah, it's very freaky. Interestingly enough, this special effects designer also did Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that movie, which is I think interesting when you see like the really white light in there, like shooting out, and like it's very alien, it's very abduction, it's very like because I love it. Like that one, I love when something bright in a horror movie could be scary, and that's a really great example of it. Like we totally see what's going on, and it's awful. Like and all she's doing is like pretending to choke, and it's like, ooh. Again, a lot of these things are so realistic that I think that they're particularly terrifying. And then adding in just the slightly surreal element of like it being blind, being white, like is a good touch that really, I think, again, unsettles in a way that like Stephen King's books unsettle, where it's not directly said why it's scary, it's just like kind of is, you know?
yeah. No, that's a really good point because it is creepy how it's like not necessary for that scene or for the car within the context of the movie to like turn the lights on all bright when that's happening, and so it's just this but it does make it way creepier that it's like suddenly super well lit while she's like choking and the whole car's lit up like an aquarium. It's creepy. That is funny that he did Close Encounters of the Third Time because there's a ton of that same like big
really
giant
bright light, yeah.
he loves lights, yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the other good sort of murderous scenes. Well, the whole sequence where the car goes after the remaining bullies and then catches on fire, and that is probably, I think, the best part of the movie. I think it was like the coolest sequence in the movie, in my opinion.
Yes, I think as soon as Christine starts hunting down her victims, like I love that portion of the film, and like the rest of it is good. I like when the kids come back and like save the day, and I get that all has to be there. But I would also watch 2 hours of Christine hunting down victims. Like it is
totally.
my favorite. When the guy is in the little like driveway thing, and the car rams itself in and like cuts him in half. Like that is so good. I would watch the effects of the car just trying to like get into like that little space and totally destroying itself to do it. Like I think that really again sends like it makes the car a character and like really like shows you that it is inescapable.
And it puts like a weird, like scary energy because it's like the car is like a very vain monster, but it also is like totally willing to just destroy itself to kill people, like constantly. Like it doesn't mind like ripping itself apart to like squeeze in there and get the guy like that. And I think that makes it way scarier. Is that it's like totally willing to like fuck itself. I mean, granted, you can see that it can regenerate itself, so the stakes are lower, but there's always something scarier about like a monster that'll like damage itself so heavily to get someone. It makes the stakes higher. So that scene kind of communicates a lot for what happens further on because you're like, oh, the car's on fire, that won't stop the car, the car's going to keep going.
It's only more powerful now.
Yeah, exactly. The car definitely thinks it's way cooler now that it's like on fire.
It does look cool. I'm not like a car I don't find cars that particularly that cool, you know. I always find them purely utilitarian in a way that I think many people don't, but a car chasing a guy while on fire is really cool looking, and with the John Carpenter music going behind it, pretty cool. It worked for me.
Absolutely.
Let me see. I have other notes.
And again, if you would like to talk about editing, that's a really great scene that's very simply constructed. It's literally just 2 shots. We just see the like car coming at us, and we see the car's point of view with the headlights, you know, and what the car's seeing, and then we see the car, and that's literally it. It's just 2 shots, and it's like so terrifying, so sick, and like just so cool. Like I
see, and I didn't even notice that. I didn't notice that it was 2 shots. It felt like more because there's so much going on that I'm like, well, it must have been a bunch of. Even just thinking about it, I watched it a few hours ago, and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that scene must have been a bunch of different shots where we're seeing the bully running and the car, but that one part, yeah, you're right. It was only 2, which is that is cool. See, that's something that I wouldn't have caught.
Well, and he uses like in this movie, I like a lot. He uses a lot of long takes and like a lot of camera movement and switches between like a steady cam type like handheld movement and then like a really really smooth movement. And there's just like a lot of planes and a lot of things happening, which I like and is common in a lot of his films. He's just layering information and like setting, and that's how his movies get a vibe because it's like there's so much happening that maybe you're not registering the first or second or third time you see it, but in the background, everything is kind of coalescing to make you feel, the vibe of the film. For Christine, I feel like it's a little paranoid and like a little like, yeah, paranoid, I guess.
Yeah. Are there other scenes in the movie you think represent that sort of simple layering information really well?
Um, yeah, there was. I can't remember. I like thought I said it out loud last night, trying to remember or to write it down. But it was. There's a couple scenes in where he is where Arnie and Dennis are talking to his parents early on, and like something like, oh, like the dad in the first scene doesn't even talk to him at all, and then like the dad's last scene where he like finally puts his hands on Arnie, I think is really good because there's like you can tell the dad's never done that before, and I think that's like a testament to the performance. But it's in it. He does like a lot of the like mirroring of scenes like that. So it's
Okay.
like you have Arnie like at first discovering the car broken and being just going like losing his mind about it and being so upset, and then later on when the car is busted he just stands there and watches it gladly like repair itself. So you get like the same scene but beginning and end where it's like it's changed because the people in it have changed.
Okay. Yeah.
And so he does a lot of that in this movie, and he does like a lot of stuff which I really like on the ends, like end third of the frame because it's he's 235 anamorphic, like big, 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 really, really wide, and like a lot of the car is like introduced like in the side of the frame or like in the bottom quarter, places where you wouldn't really put a character most of the time like in a frame, but he is putting actual information down there, and that again is like
Oh.
unsettling because you're not used to like getting information of like, oh, this girl's looking at this guy in the bottom corner. Like when Dennis first asks out the girl that Arnie eventually ends up with,
Yeah.
like that the blonde girl that's also in that scene is into him because she like looks up and like looks really sad when he passes her by. But all that happens like in the corner of one frame as the camera's dollying. So it's just like there's a lot of that in this movie where it's like
Okay.
you probably understood that blonde girl was sad that he didn't go out with her, but it
Yeah.
was only one little thing, and that's so there's a lot of little things like that. That
Yeah.
makes
No,
sense.
that makes sense.
Sorry.
And see, again, as a total novice with that stuff, it's really interesting to like have someone point it out because then it seems obvious. You're like, oh yeah, of course, because you put it in the bottom of the screen, and that of course. But now I didn't notice it. I just picked up on it. It is very invisible, as you said. Like it's hard to pick up on that stuff if you're not looking for it. But it works very well, which is why I think all of us ended up liking the movie so much.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and like us today, like the way that stuff is cut, we pick up on information very quickly, visual information. So something like this is even easier for us to like understand now than it would have been if we saw this when it came out, because you wouldn't have been exposed to so much like quick cutting of images, like compared to us, like you were saying, the diners, drive-ins, and dives, like horrible fast cutting between
so much
nightmare shots.
information.
But that's so much information that we're used to picking up visually. So like
Yeah.
everybody alive today is going to be very good at reading visual information, and that's why movies like Christine with a lot of visual information and very little auditory information, almost all except for the Christine's voice for Roar, but like I think that's why it's fun for modern audiences.
Yeah. The sound of the car is very good too. Now that you brought it up, that it has a real.
I think it's a Mustang.
It doesn't sound comical or like overdone, but it is menacing. It becomes menacing throughout the movie.
Yeah, I think they used a Mustang Superjet engine or something, some sort of fancy race car. So I guess those cars don't actually sound like it. Apparently, the Christine car only has like a 5-liter engine or something. Like it seems very small and not very scary sounding.
Yeah, that would make a big difference. Like my car like makes a weird whining noise all the time, and it would be
Oh, like,
very.
is it electric?
No, it's not. It shouldn't make the whining noise, but I've yet to figure out why it does that. And I mean, so far it isn't broken, but it's annoying, and it's not menacing at all. So I can't menace people with my 2011 Jeep Compass is not a scary car, nor does it seem to be jealous. Yet. We'll see, though. I'm trying to look at some of my other quick notes about the movie, but if you guys have any other stuff that came up as we watched it, I feel like there's so many little things in this movie that are really interesting. But I always find. Oh, go
I want to
ahead.
give a shout out to the guy that played Dennis. I thought that
Yeah.
he did a particularly good job as a guy who is cooler than one of his friends, but isn't a dick about it.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a tough role to play, I think, because it would have been weird if they were totally mismatched, and you had like a cool athlete guy who there's no reason that he would be hanging out with a nerd like Arnie, but he plays it very. It's I don't know. It's just an interesting performance. He's patient with Arnie's weirdness and like seems to like kind of want to bring him out of his shell a little bit.
Mhm.
Which is it's just kind of a unique character. You don't see that a lot, really. You usually have more of that like this is the nerd, this is the jock. They're diametrically opposed, but here you have someone who's kind of reaching across the high school aisle, so to speak, and I just thought he played it really well as like a smart jock, not a bully jock, because he's friends also with the bull like kind of dumber jock characters too, like when they're in the library. Like those guys don't come off as nuanced as his character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when you also read into like the very clear, thing, like undertone of him and Arnie, him being very much in love with Arnie and not, being able to really handle Arnie, like not, like when we see, like, oh, here's a great example. When we see his POV when he's running on the field and it zooms in on them making out in the car, Arnie and the girl. You think it's because the girl, he asked the girl out and she said no, and she's going with Arnie, but like you think that the zoom in's going to be on her, but the center of the frame is Arnie. So we're very clearly seeing that he's not looking at her. He's jealous that she's making out with Arnie. And it's like pretty clear, like when you watch it with that input. And so again, that actor is delivering that on top of the jock performance, which I think is, he's really doing layers there. And I really like the performance. And Carpenter is really like an actor's director a lot of the times. Like he gets performances out of everybody in the movie, and that guy I think is like such a good example because he has such a reality to him that is but it's so unusual, so it's very different than you see elsewhere in other films.
Well, and Arnie is very, very good too, because he also could have easily. There's a ton of stereotypes, different ones throughout the movie that he could have fallen into a little more easily. I mean, there's like the classic like a high school nerd at the beginning, and he doesn't even lean too hard into that. He just seems sort of like a somewhat awkward teenager. And then his kind of descent into madness is, I would say like it's not like nuanced or anything, but it's very it's more jarring than I expected. He turns into a real dick very quickly, and he becomes like scary in a way that I didn't expect for a movie like where a guy's getting driven insane by like a car. Like I didn't expect that level of like it was like genuinely sort of upsetting or creepy. He's like slapping his girlfriend around and like just being like a weird, like he's just being a dick all the time. And I know there's something like more. It was a good performance. I thought it worked, and it didn't need to, on top of, it could have just been he kind of goes comically insane and the car is doing its own thing, but they kind of worked jointly. I thought it was another thing that kind of made the movie work better than it might have otherwise.
Yeah, I thought his performance when toward the end when he and Dennis are in the car and he's like going super fast and he just starts to get really unhinged. He has a good crazy face in those scenes.
Yeah, I was going to bring that same scene up. That scene is very scary. And Christine the car isn't really doing much in that scene. Like it's obviously they're in the car, but like it's all just Arnie and Dennis and him going nuts and I mean the standards for drunk driving in 1978 were already pretty wild. So like having like 3 beers behind the wheel is like normal, and then the not normal thing is how fast he's driving. I think like the 3 beers thing is fine.
Well,
Yeah,
and
normally
again,
those
that's
3 beers would
another-
mellow you out. You wouldn't be
Yeah.
speeding.
Yeah, so you can be a little more comfortable behind the wheel.
Well, then you're looser when the cast iron steering wheel like goes through your chest,
Straight
you're
through
your
just a
sternum,
little-
yeah.
you're just a little bit loose. But that scene again is a parallel with the scene at the beginning where Dennis is driving Arnie and they're in the dark and they're talking. And now we have Arnie at the end, Arnie driving Dennis, and they're in the dark talking. And just again, you see like how different how far we've progressed from the two scenes that are now Arnie's totally nuts and he's like in charge and he's like scaring Dennis. It's just very, very different than the scene before, or the scene at the beginning of the movie that is shot in a similar manner with like a similar look. So,
and I think that scene captures really well how scary it is to be in the car with someone that's driving like a maniac, because I've been like never in that type of a situation, but I've definitely been with people in the car where I'm like, this person is driving unsafely. And it's like that weird, like I think there's even a shot where Dennis like slams his feet down on his side, like instinctively, like where you're trying to brake, but you're on the passenger side. I think that scene captures that very well, because it's a bad feeling to be like, oh, fuck. Because then, else you don't want to say anything, or you don't want to like make them feel worse or bad, because they're driving. So it's a very tense. It was a nice spooky scene on top of all the other supernatural car stuff that even if there was no supernatural car stuff would have been very tense and unpleasant.
Yeah.
I think it really gets at the if you want to be real cute about it, you could say that this movie is very much about the deranged relationship that Americans have with their cars. I think that would probably be way too cute of a reading of this, but you could do that a little bit. And there's a line in that scene where he goes, what does he say? He says, there's nothing better than being behind the wheel of your own car, and except for maybe pussy, is what he says. That's a full quote, but and I feel like that kind of gets at like we do have a real weird relationship with cars in the United States. Like they're very much like this little individual extension of ourselves that we see as like somewhere between like a home and like a body part or something like that. And they get at it a little bit in this movie where it's like, if you really took that to its logical extreme, you'd end up with something like this where the car, because people do get real psycho and people behave differently behind the wheel of a car than they would in pretty much any other situation, including me. I've gotten road rage before, and I'm not like a rage-filled person, but it's something about the anonymity of other cars and shit really drives you batty. But that's...
Well, I mean, you can look at it as like I think, I mean, again, and this is what another thing that I think makes this film great is like you can read basically, you can put a lot of things onto it, and it's John Carpenter's films tend to be extremely prescient, especially in the like dark stuff. Like, it's like he has a scene in They Live where the LAPD like raids the homeless camp that literally looks exactly like what is happening today when they sweep homeless camps. Like, it's just horrifying. And 40 years before it happened or 30 years before it happened. And so it's like, I think this is a lot too, because I kind of can see it as like Arnie and the car is like a society and car culture, like in our dependence on cars. Christine is like, I kind of thought like, it's also like a take on an abusive relationship or whatever, but like we do have an abusive relationship with cars. Like we're dependent on them and they are destroying us and destroying our planet. And you can, you could read that as this, I think. You could make an argument.
Yeah, I think so. Because, we do definitely have a really weird, fucked up relationship with cars where, like, you absolutely have to have a car, pretty much. I've been riding a bike more just in the last 9 months, and that's like a lot of effort, and I cannot do that for I do it for fun. I can't do it for almost any productive reason in my life. And I live in a region that is relatively non-car friendly, and even with that, it's like, no, you need a car. You have to have a car. Even if you don't like it, you have to have a car, which is weird. It's kind of fucked up. And what if the car became alive and started hunting people? Would I like it more? Maybe. if my car took revenge on people I didn't like, I would maybe feel better about having it, but I don't know. I can think of a few people I would like my Jeep Compass to hunt down in the night for me.
Sit behind the like parking barriers. I love that the sequence with the first bully that she takes down, and he's like in
Yeah,
the parking, and like the like cars like hiding behind the like pillar of the bridge, and like yeah, that's the scene where again it should be goofy that they're like panning around. They're like, oh no, a car! Like
it's the
like but
car.
it is
Yeah,
scary.
it is scary. Yeah, well, because it builds it up so well by that point. You're like, oh no, that car is definitely gonna like do something horrible to the fat bully, and he's the one that can't run the fastest, obviously. I also love how I wrote this down. When it finally gets him cornered in that like truck dock or whatever, and he like pulls a knife because I mean I think he thinks that obviously there's someone in the car that he's gonna attack with the knife, but it's just the image of someone just like being cornered by an evil car and being like, I have a knife is very funny.
My trusty greaser knife.
Yeah, my scary switchblade will. My trusty
Run a
switchblade will
knife to a
surely
screwdriver fight or to
Yeah.
a wrench
Make
fight.
a car fight.
I'm trying to think what other little things. Yeah, the whole movie just it also just moved really quickly. It's almost a 2 hour movie, and it just flew by. Much like a speeding car, and I really enjoyed it. Harry Dean Stanton was very fun. I specifically made a note of him because I was happy when he showed up, and he just I don't know again a very small part, but he plays it very well. It's just like because it's like I wonder what that character is supposed to be thinking, right? Is he like I assume he thinks that like Arnie is killing people or
Because he's
something.
playing the cop, so
Yeah,
the detective.
but the way he asks Arnie questions initially is like he also seems to suspect the car already a little bit. Like it almost reads where he's like this car is like there's something weird about this car. Like tell me about the car.
I mean, maybe he's like the Stephen King X-Files. Like, we don't really know what he doesn't say what department he's from. He could very well be them, like, out being like, oh, you got to go send this guy. He's the expert on possessed cars.
Oh,
possessing
yeah.
cars, you know? Like, he could possibly be that kind of detective, a supernatural detective.
Damn, that would be actually not a bad extent. Like Stephen King universe, like little novel would be like a guy who investigates all the different weird shit that has happened. Because Stephen King's, he connects all his books already, so you just have some guy getting sent to go. I don't know where you'd start with that, but there's been a bunch of murders at this hotel in Colorado, and I spend most of my time in Maine, obviously, because that seems to be the epicenter of all this wild shit. But that would be interesting. Well, I think we're not super limited on time, but we try to wrap up within an hour or so, and we're coming up on an hour 10. So I suppose we should probably wrap her up a little bit. Any closing thoughts on the movie Christine as a whole, or any other specific stuff we wanted to talk about?
I don't know. I don't really have anything else. I really liked the movie. I was glad that I was glad to be surprised at how good it was rather than disappointed. I mean, that's true of all movies, but especially in the case of a John Carpenter, Stephen King joint.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, again was surprised by how much I liked it. I saw it like only a little bit over a year ago, and I have just been seeing everyone being like, "You need to watch Christine. It's so good." So that's all I gotta say is watch it. It's spooky the way that it makes me feel spooky in the same way that Stephen King's books make me feel spooky. I think that's accomplishment because a lot of his adaptations don't do that. They're scary, or they follow the plot, or it's different. But like this and The Shining make me feel the way his books feel when I watch them. So I think that's really the accomplishment. And also the sit car on fire, and it goes to the gas station. Man, there's a lot of there's a guy on fire in that. There's a lot of such fire effects in this movie.
Yeah, the gas station exploding was pretty sweet. That was why that whole sequence was so cool, because it was like, the car just really wrecked a lot of shit pretty quickly, which was fun to watch.
Yeah.
And you could tell it was all real. They were definitely blowing all that shit up. Like, there's
They
no.
built the gas station, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was a real gas. It was a gas station that they built real size.
Yeah, no, and it looks cool. Much like The Thing, which also has some sweet explosions by the end that look very real. But yeah, I agree with both of you. I was, I love Stephen King, obviously. I love John Carpenter, so I wasn't expecting to not like this movie at all. But again, like the premise for me, I was like, a scary car? Like, this seems goofy. Like, I expected it to be like enjoyable, but not particularly like, scary or I expected it to be just kind of a romp. But it was actually like pretty spooky. It wasn't bone chilling or anything, but I thought it was convincingly very scary, and I really enjoyed it, but more than I was expecting, which was, yeah, again, a pleasant surprise because my expectations were already pretty high and they were exceeded. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I would encourage everyone in the audience to check it out. And I think, yeah, Kelly, you said it real well with the fact that on a show where we talk about Stephen King adaptations, there's not every single one. Some of them may be successful in their own right for various reasons, but they don't always nail sort of the tone or kind of the feeling of Stephen King's stuff. And this one definitely does. And really, it just makes me wish that John Carpenter had made other Stephen King adaptations, even just some of his short stories. Damn, I'd really love to see that. So, a great we'll have to brainstorm what other John Carpenter Stephen King adaptations would be really cool.
Yeah.
But alas, we just got the one. What's that?
The Jaunt. He would do the Jaunt.
Oh yeah, he would. The Jaunt is that's a really good Stephen King story, and
it's a good one.
That would be really good as a Jaunt. Yeah, that's an excellent. God damn, I think you might have beat.
That's the one that I would like to make into a movie. So
I hope someone does. You should. Yeah, I would love. Man, that's such a scary story.
I hate it. It's so
yeah. It's still, I think about it all the time, honestly.
Yeah.
Team up with past guest Robbie and make.
Yeah. One of our past guests made he did a Dollar Baby, which is like that Stephen King program where you can get funding to make one of his short stories, and he did his own short Stephen King film that was really good.
That's cool.
Yeah, we watched it before we talked to him, and it was really good. So hopefully maybe someone will make the Jaunt, but we'll see, and we'll talk about it on the show if they do, obviously. So, Kelly, all family obligations aside, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us, and we would love to have you back. Your insights on how movies are made are extraordinarily interesting, and as two people that, again, don't really know very much about movies in terms of like the technical details, it's really, really nice to have someone that can kind of point that stuff out because it's very cool.
Yeah, well, it's a sickness, and I'm compelled. So anytime you need
well,
we're
all compelled by sickness, and that's why we like Stephen King stuff, because he's been compelled by all sorts of sicknesses throughout his life, and we love him for it. So for those in our audience, thank you very much for tuning in this month. We're not entirely sure when we will be broadcasting next month. It'll be sometime next month. We haven't figured out when, because I'm going to be on a ship for 2 weeks next month, and I am not allowed to use the internet for streaming because the ship has limited internet. So I will have to wait till I get back. But we will be back in May sometime with another Stephen King guest. In the meantime, you can keep tuned to the Instagram page that we use to update things, and we'll announce stuff there. Court or Kelly, do you have anything, like other stuff you want to announce or plug or anything like that?
No, not currently. I might have some stuff coming up, but we'll burn that car when we get to it.
Nice. Yeah, we'll get there. All right. Well, with that, we'd also like to, of course, thank Stab Theater for putting this show on every month, and Jesse for wrangling all the Zoom and Twitch links and all that. So we really appreciate it. And please do check out all the other really great shows at Stab, virtually or in person. Court and I have performed there for a long time off and on, and it's a really, really cool theater and place, and we really like getting to be a part of it. So please do check out all of Stab's other stuff, and we'll see you sometime next month.
I'm just trying to get the music to respond to me. Oh, it could have been so clean. There it is. Thank you guys for hanging out. That is Podful Cast. That is it for us for the night. But, we've got so much stuff going on here all the time. Tomorrow being, kind of the peak of our having too much to do. Got the Van Full of Candy show at noon. Got Inside the Box at 4. It's basically a good old 8-9 hour day of streaming with us. So enjoy that. For now, though, let's see if we can send the rest of you guys still hanging out here over to... Are they still going? I was keeping an eye on Max Drag over at Badlands. It looks like they're still going. So send you over to a local show, the Max Drag show over at Badlands. See you guys back here tomorrow. Have a good night. Hold on for the raid.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap.
That's a
That
wrap.
was really fun. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks again for
Thanks
coming
for
on.
joining us.
We definitely want to have
Oh
you
man,
back.
a couple friends that watch it already said that they loved it. So.
Oh, good. That's very nice of
Yeah.
them. Tell them thank you.
I will.
And yeah, we would love to have you back because your editing insights are very interesting to have. So we'll definitely brainstorm another maybe Maximo.